The struggling vendor. The small village of Obina was known for its bustling marketplace, where vendors lined the streets selling everything from fresh produce to hand-woven baskets. Amid the lively chatter and vibrant colors, Adana's yogurt stall stood out like a beacon. Customers gathered every morning, forming long queues to get a taste of her creamy and delicious yogurt. Children laughed as they savored the rich treat, while adults praised the way it refreshed their spirits in the sweltering heat. Adana, a warm-hearted and hard-working woman in her early 30s, was the pride of the village. Her yogurt was unrivaled, known for its smooth texture and unique flavor that left everyone wanting more. Her cheerful demeanor and the personal care she gave to her business made her beloved by all. No one, however, knew the secret behind her yogurt's unforgettable taste. Whenever anyone asked, Adana would simply smile and say, "A good recipe and a lot of love." Not far from Adana's stall was another yogurt vendor, Ngozi. Unlike Adana, Ngozi struggled to attract customers. Her yogurt tasted fine, but it lacked a special something that made Adana's so irresistible. Ngozi's business was dwindling, and the sight of Adana's thriving stall gnawed at her heart. Once childhood friends, their paths had diverged over the years, though they still exchanged polite smiles when their eyes met across the market. One afternoon, after a particularly slow day, Ngozi decided to swallow her pride and approach Adana. She waited until the crowd around Adana's stall thinned before walking over. Adana greeted her with a warm smile, her arms laden with empty yogurt jars from a day of brisk sales. "Ngozi, it's been a while since we talked. How are you?" Adana asked, genuinely happy to see her old friend. Ngozi forced a smile. "I'm fine, Adana. Business has been slow, though. I wanted to ask you something. How do you make your yogurt so delicious? Everyone in the village can't stop talking about it." Adana's face softened, and she hesitated before responding. "Ngozi, it's not just about the recipe. It's about consistency, cleanliness, and patience. You've been in this business for a while, you know how it is." Ngozi nodded, but the answer didn't satisfy her. She pressed further. "I understand, but surely you have a secret ingredient, something that sets your yogurt apart. Could you share it with me? Just between us, as friends." Adana chuckled lightly, shaking her head. "There's no special secret, Ngozi. Just hard work and love. That's all there is to it." Ngozi's chest tightened with frustration. She had hoped Adana would be more forthcoming, but it was clear she wasn't going to reveal anything. Masking her disappointment, Ngozi forced another smile and said, "Thank you, Adana. I'll keep trying my best." As Ngozi walked back to her store, her heart burned with envy. The memory of their childhood together flickered in her mind. How they had shared dreams of building something meaningful. Now, standing in the shadow of Adana's success, Ngozi felt a gnawing sense of inadequacy. That night, as Ngozi lay in bed, her thoughts raced. Adana was hiding something, she was sure of it. The question wasn't if Adana had a secret, it was what that secret was. And Ngozi vowed to find out, no matter the cost. The first seeds of her envy had been sown, setting the stage for a tale of greed, betrayal, and redemption. A secret discovered. The moon hung low over the quiet village of Obina, its pale light casting long shadows across the thatched rooftops. The lively chatter of the market had long died down, replaced by the occasional hoot of an owl. Most villagers were fast asleep, but Ngozi lay wide awake, her mind racing with schemes. The gnawing envy in her heart had grown unbearable, and she was determined to uncover the secret behind Adana's unparalleled yogurt. Dressed in dark clothing to blend with the night, Ngozi slipped out of her modest home. She treaded carefully through the village, her sandals barely making a sound on the dirt paths. The flickering light from Adana's kitchen window guided her like a beacon. As she approached Adana's compound, she paused, her heart thundering in her chest. This was risky, and she knew it, but desperation outweighed caution. Ngozi crouched near a bush outside the kitchen window, carefully peeking in. Adana stood at the counter, her back turned as she walked. The warm glow of a kerosene lamp illuminated the small kitchen, revealing an array of tools and ingredients. Large pots simmered on the stove, and glass bottles lined the counter, ready to be filled. At first, everything seemed ordinary. Adana moved with practiced ease, mixing ingredients with precision. Ngozi furrowed her brow. There has to be something she's hiding, she thought. Her patience paid off when Adana paused, glanced around as if to ensure she was alone, and then did something that froze Ngozi in place. Adana reached for the edge of her wrapper and untied it, letting it drop slightly. Ngozi's eyes widened in disbelief as she watched Adana lean over the bottles and carefully express milk from her own breast directly into them. The scene felt surreal, like a nightmare and a revelation wrapped into one. Ngozi clapped her hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Adana continued her walk, seemingly oblivious to the silent observer outside. For a moment, Ngozi debated confronting her on the spot, but fear held her back. What would she say? And who would believe her without proof? Ngozi sat frozen as she processed what she had just witnessed. Adana's secret ingredient wasn't exotic herbs or some rare additive, it was her own breast milk. The thought both horrified and intrigued Ngozi. Suddenly, it all made sense: the richness of the yogurt, the loyal customers, the inexplicable flavor that set it apart. After what felt like an eternity, Ngozi forced herself to retreat. She carefully backed away from the window, her heart pounding in her chest. Once she was a safe distance from the compound, she broke into a brisk walk, then a full sprint toward her home. Once inside, Ngozi sank onto her bed, her mind racing. She replayed the scene over and over, torn between disbelief and a dangerous curiosity. Part of her wanted to expose Adana immediately, but a deeper, darker part of her whispered other possibilities. What if I tried it, she muttered to herself. What if I could use this secret to my own advantage? As the night wore on, Ngozi's shock began to morph into determination. She was no longer simply envious of Adana's success, now, she was resolved to surpass it. The forbidden secret she had uncovered would become her weapon, and she would wield it without hesitation. For Ngozi, this was no longer just about yogurt. It was about power, respect, and revenge. And as she lay awake under the same moon that had guided her earlier, she made a vow: she would rise, no matter the cost. A dangerous choice. The morning sun cast its golden rays across the village of Obina, but Ngozi was far from her usual self. She sat at her small table, staring at the half-filled bottle of yogurt in front of her. The events of the previous night haunted her thoughts. She knew Adana's secret now, an unthinkable, taboo revelation, but the question remained: what would she do with it? Ngozi weighed her options. On one hand, she could expose Adana's secret to the village. The thought of Adana's shame and the potential collapse of her business filled Ngozi with a fleeting sense of satisfaction. Yet, doubt lingered. Would anyone even believe me? She wondered. Adana's reputation was sterling, and without proof, Ngozi's accusations might backfire. Her second option was far more dangerous, but also far more tempting: replicate Adana's method. Ngozi considered it carefully, her heart pounding. The idea of using her own breast milk to make yogurt was repulsive at first. But as she thought about the potential rewards, the crowds flocking to her store, the money she could earn, the respect she would command, her initial disgust began to fade. This could change everything, she muttered, her resolve solidifying. If Adana can do it, so can I. That night, Ngozi prepared her first batch of special yogurt. She locked her doors, ensuring no one could see what she was doing. Her hands trembled as she imitated the method she had observed. It felt strange, even wrong, but she reassured herself that it was harmless. It's natural, isn't it? No one will ever know. The next day, Ngozi carried her cooler to the market as usual, but this time, she was nervous. She watched intently as her first customers tasted the yogurt. To her astonishment, they immediately complimented the creamy texture and unique flavor. Word spread quickly, and by midday, Ngozi's store was crowded with eager customers. By the end of the week, Ngozi was the talk of the village. People compared her yogurt to Adana's, and many claimed it was better. Customers who had once lined up at Adana's store began to drift toward Ngozi's. The tables had turned, and Ngozi felt an intoxicating sense of triumph. However, her success did not go unnoticed by Adana. At first, Adana was pleased to see Ngozi's business improving. She had always wanted her friend to succeed. But as the days went by and Adana's own sales began to dip, she grew uneasy. Customers started asking why her yogurt wasn't as creamy as Ngozi's, a question that stung more than she cared to admit. Adana decided to visit Ngozi's store one evening after the market had closed. She found her friend cleaning up, her face glowing with newfound confidence. Adana forced a smile as she approached. "Ngozi, I see business is booming for you," Adana said, her tone light but probing. Ngozi returned the smile, but there was a flicker of unease in her eyes. "Yes, it's been a good week. I suppose people just needed a change." Adana nodded slowly, studying her friend. "It's strange, though. Your yogurt has suddenly improved so much. Did you change your recipe?" Ngozi froze for a split second before forcing a laugh. "Not really. Just a bit more care and attention, I suppose." Adana didn't press further, but as she walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Meanwhile, Ngozi watched her go, her chest tightening. The lie had come easily, but it left a bitter taste in her mouth. She knew Adana was suspicious, and the thought of being discovered sent a chill down her spine. As the days turned into weeks, the tension between the two women grew. The villagers, oblivious to the brewing storm, continued to compare their yogurts, fueling the silent rivalry. Ngozi reveled in her newfound fame, but a part of her couldn't ignore the gnawing guilt. She had crossed the line, and deep down, she knew there would be consequences, the taste of success. Ngozi's transformation was nothing short of remarkable. What had once been a struggling store now stood as the busiest corner in the marketplace. Customers lined up every morning, eager to buy her yogurt. Her unique blend had become the talk of the village, praised for its creamy texture and rich taste. Villagers claimed it had a rejuvenating effect, and rumors of its secret recipe only added to its allure. Ngozi basked in her newfound fame and wealth. With the profits she earned, she replaced her old cooler with a modern refrigeration unit, purchased colorful signage for her store, and even hired 2 young assistants to help manage the growing demand. She expanded her operations, opening another store near the neighboring village's school, where sales skyrocketed. For the first time in her life, Ngozi felt truly successful. Her sudden rise did not go unnoticed. Adana watched from a distance as her once loyal customers gravitated toward Ngozi's store. Her own sales began to dwindle, and the lively crowds that had defined her mornings grew sparse. Adana's heart ached as she handed over jars of yogurt to a handful of buyers, knowing that most of the villagers now preferred Ngozi's product. Adana tried to ignore the nagging questions that filled her mind. She had taught Ngozi everything she knew about making yogurt, every recipe, every technique. How could Ngozi's yogurt surpass hers so suddenly? Something didn't add up. One evening, after another slow day at the market, Adana confided in her husband, Emeka. Ngozi's yogurt is different. It tastes richer, somehow. I don't understand how she's doing it. Emeka, a practical and supportive man, offered her a reassuring smile. Maybe she found her own twist on the recipe. Have you asked her about it? I have, Adana replied, her voice tinged with frustration. She says she's just putting in extra care and attention, but I don't believe her. There's something more to this. Emeka frowned, sensing his wife's distress. Then you need to find out, Adana. If she's doing something unfair or dishonest, you deserve to know. Adana nodded, her resolve hardening. She decided to keep a closer eye on Ngozi. If there was a secret behind her success, Adana would uncover it. Meanwhile, Ngozi reveled in her growing fortune. She upgraded her home, bought finer clothes, and sent her younger siblings to better schools. Her store became a symbol of prosperity, attracting even more customers. But beneath her confident exterior, guilt gnawed at her. She avoided direct conversations with Adana, fearing her former friend might uncover the truth. One afternoon, as Ngozi closed her store, she spotted Adana standing across the marketplace, her eyes fixed on her. Ngozi forced a smile and waved, but the sight of Adana's sharp, probing gaze sent a chill down her spine. She quickly turned away, pretending to count her earnings. Adana's suspicion grew with each passing day. She began observing Ngozi's movements, noting how secretive she had become. Adana's once warm feelings for her friend were now clouded by mistrust. She resolved to find out the truth, even if it meant confronting Ngozi directly. As Ngozi's fame soared and Adana's business faltered, the divide between the two women deepened. The quiet rivalry that had begun as envy was now on the verge of turning into something far more dangerous. Both women were caught in a silent battle, each driven by their own sense of justice and ambition. For Ngozi, success tasted sweet, but the shadow of her deception loomed ever larger. For Adana, the bitterness of betrayal was growing, and she knew it was only a matter of time before she would discover the source of Ngozi's sudden rise. The question was not if the truth would come out. It was when, and at what cost, the unraveling. The marketplace of Obina, once a place of vibrant camaraderie and bustling trade, began to feel heavy with whispers and unease. The tension between Adana and Ngozi, once childhood friends and allies, had grown impossible to ignore. Customers noticed how the two women avoided each other's gaze, and the warmth that had once defined their interactions was replaced by cold suspicion. Adana, driven by a gnawing need for answers, decided to take matters into her own hands. Her instincts told her Ngozi's sudden success was tied to something unethical, and she was determined to uncover the truth. For days, she quietly observed Ngozi's store, noting every detail of her operations. Still, nothing seemed out of place, until one fateful night. Adana waited until the marketplace was dark and silent before making her way to Ngozi's home. Hiding near the back window, she peered into the dimly lit kitchen. Her heart pounded as she saw Ngozi working on a fresh batch of yogurt. Everything seemed ordinary until Ngozi hesitated, glanced around nervously, and did something that made Adana's breath catch. Ngozi reached under her blouse and began expressing milk into a bowl. Adana's eyes widened in shock, and her hands trembled as she clung to the windowsill. Her mind raced, struggling to comprehend what she was witnessing. This is how she's been making her yogurt so rich and creamy. The betrayal hit Adana like a physical blow. Unable to watch any longer, Adana turned and hurried back to her own home. That night, she lay awake, the image of Ngozi's actions replaying in her mind. A mixture of anger, sadness, and disbelief churned within her. This wasn't just a violation of trust, it was a betrayal of their friendship and the community's trust. The next morning, Adana confronted Ngozi at her stall. Her voice trembled with emotion as she said, "Ngozi, I know what you've been doing." Ngozi froze, the color draining from her face. "What are you talking about?" she asked, forcing a nervous laugh. Adana's eyes burned with intensity. "Don't pretend. I saw you last night, Ngozi. I saw everything." Panic flickered across Ngozi's face, but she quickly masked it with defiance. You don't know what you're talking about, Adana. If you have no proof, don't come here making baseless accusations. Adana's voice rose, drawing the attention of nearby vendors. You've betrayed not just me, but the entire village. You're deceiving everyone who trusts you. Customers began to gather, their curiosity piqued by the heated exchange. Ngozi, now surrounded by watchful eyes, felt the walls closing in. You're jealous of my success, she spat, her voice shaking. You can't stand that I finally made something of myself. Adana's chest heaved with frustration, but she knew she couldn't prove her claims without undeniable evidence. She glared at Ngozi, her voice lowering to a dangerous calm. The truth will come out, Ngozi. It always does. As Adana stormed away, Ngozi felt her world begin to unravel. The confrontation had left her rattled, and she knew it was only a matter of time before the rumor started. Her paranoia grew with each passing day. Every glance from a customer felt like suspicion, every whisper like an accusation. Meanwhile, the community began to pick up on the tension. Whispers of unnatural practices started circulating in the market. People speculated about what might be causing the rift between the two women, and some began questioning the sudden success of Ngozi's yogurt. Ngozi tried to carry on as usual, but the weight of her secret pressed down on her. She avoided Adana's gaze and dodged probing questions from curious villagers. The walls of her success, built on a shaky foundation of deception, were beginning to crack. For Adana, the betrayal was a wound that wouldn't heal. She resolved to expose the truth, not out of vengeance, but to protect the community she loved. The unraveling of Ngozi's secret had begun, and the storm it would unleash was only just gathering strength. The reckoning. The whispers about Ngozi's yogurt had grown too loud to ignore. In the neighboring town, where the story had reached the ears of a young journalist named Chidi, curiosity was piqued. Known for his hard-hitting exposés, Chidi had made a name for himself uncovering local scandals. When he heard rumors about Ngozi's miracle yogurt, then the mysterious tension between her and Adana, he decided to investigate. Arriving in Obina under the guise of a customer, Chidi visited Ngozi's store. He bought a bottle of yogurt and struck up a casual conversation, praising her success. Ngozi, flattered, shared vague details about her journey, carefully omitting anything suspicious. But Chidi wasn't fooled. He noted her nervous laughter and evasive answers, which only deepened his curiosity. Chidi spent the next few days interviewing villagers, including Adana. Though hesitant at first, Adana eventually confided in him. She recounted what she had witnessed and the betrayal she felt. I don't have hard evidence, she admitted, but I know what I saw. Ngozi is deceiving everyone. Encouraged by Adana's account, Chidi decided to dig deeper. Disguising himself one night, he hid near Ngozi's home, armed with a camera. As the moon cast its silver glow over the village, Chidi waited patiently. His persistence paid off when he saw Ngozi through her kitchen window, repeating the very act Adana had described. Chidi captured everything on film, undeniable proof of Ngozi's method. The next morning, Chidi published an article in the local newspaper titled, "The Hidden Ingredients Behind Obina's Famous Yogurt." The piece detailed Ngozi's process and included the incriminating photographs. Within hours, the village was abuzz with outrage. Copies of the paper circulated rapidly, and villagers gathered in disbelief to discuss the shocking revelation. At the marketplace, Ngozi arrived at her stall, oblivious to the storm brewing. She noticed the strange looks and whispers but brushed them off, assuming they were the usual gossip. However, as the day progressed, no customers approached her. When she tried to call out to passers-by, they glared at her with a mixture of disgust and anger. Finally, a group of villagers confronted her. "How could you deceive us like this, Ngozi?" one woman shouted. "We trusted you. You've been feeding us something unnatural, and you didn't even tell us," another added. Ngozi's defenses crumbled. She stammered, trying to explain, but her words only fueled the anger of the crowd. People threw her yogurt bottles on the ground, smashing them in protest. The once thriving store was now a scene of chaos. Adana, watching from a distance, felt a pang of sadness. Despite the betrayal, seeing her former friend humiliated was painful. But she also knew this reckoning was inevitable. The situation escalated when local authorities arrived. Chidi's article had caught their attention, and they launched an investigation into Ngozi's business practices. Accusations of health code violations and public endangerment were leveled against her. Ngozi was fined heavily and ordered to cease all yogurt production immediately. With her reputation in ruins and her business shut down, Ngozi returned home to find her neighbors turning their backs on her. The shame was unbearable. Her once proud success had crumbled to dust, and she was left to face the consequences of her actions alone. Chidi's article concluded with a poignant reminder: success built on deception is fleeting. The truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds its way to the surface. For the village of Obina, the scandal served as a harsh lesson about trust and integrity. For Ngozi, it marked the beginning of a long and painful journey of reflection, regret, and redemption. Redemption and reflection. The days following the scandal were the darkest in Ngozi's life. Her once bustling home was eerily quiet, the laughter of customers replaced by the whispers of neighbors who now avoided her. Her business had been shut down, her savings drained by heavy fines, and her reputation lay in ruins. Even children, once eager to greet her, crossed the street to avoid her. Ngozi spent her days indoors, too ashamed to face the world. But the silence gave her time to reflect. The memory of her actions and the faces of those she had deceived haunted her. She thought of Adana, the friend she had betrayed, and the guilt became unbearable. She realized that her envy and greed had not only ruined her own life but had also deeply hurt someone who had once cared for her. One morning, after weeks of isolation, Ngozi decided to take the first step toward making amends. She walked to Adana's house, her head bowed in shame. Adana was in her garden, tending to her plants. When she saw Ngozi approaching, she froze, her expression unreadable. "Adana," Ngozi began, her voice trembling, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to say this. I'm sorry. I betrayed your trust, and I hurt you deeply. I let my envy consume me, and I made terrible choices. Please, if there's any way I can make it right, tell me." Adana's eyes narrowed as she studied Ngozi. "You hurt me, Ngozi. You betrayed not just me, but everyone in this village. Forgiveness isn't something I can give lightly." Ngozi nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were, but I want to earn back the trust one lost." Adana let out a long sigh. "Forgiveness isn't just about words, Ngozi. It's about actions. If you truly want to make things right, you have to prove it. It will take time, and it won't be easy." Grateful for even a small chance at redemption, Ngozi agreed. She began working hard to regain the trust of the community. She volunteered at the market, helping other vendors clean their stalls. She offered to tutor young girls in the art of yogurt making, teaching them honest methods and sharing lessons from her mistakes. It wasn't easy. Many villagers were skeptical of her intentions, and some outright refused to speak to her. But slowly, as weeks turned into months, her consistent efforts began to soften hearts. Her humility and determination spoke louder than words ever could. Adana, too, began to see the sincerity in Ngozi's actions. While she remained cautious, she allowed Ngozi to assist her at her stall occasionally, seeing it as an opportunity for Ngozi to rebuild her sense of purpose. One day, as the two walked side by side, Adana turned to Ngozi and said, "I didn't think you had it in you to change. But you're proving me wrong. Keep it up. Ngozi's heart swelled with gratitude. Though the road to redemption was long, moments like this reminded her that it was worth every effort. Years later, Ngozi opened a new business, this time selling handcrafted pottery, a skill she had learned during her period of self-reflection. Her shop, though modest, became a symbol of transformation and integrity. Villagers who had once turned their backs on her began to return, offering smiles and words of encouragement. Ngozi's story became a cautionary tale in the village, told to young entrepreneurs and dreamers. It served as a reminder that shortcuts driven by greed could lead to ruin, but true success was built on honesty, hard work, and the courage to face one's mistakes. For Adana and Ngozi, their friendship never returned to what it once was, but a new bond formed, one built on mutual respect and understanding. Both women had grown from the experience, and the village of Obina was better for it. In the end, Ngozi's journey of redemption stood as proof that even the deepest wounds could heal, and even the most tarnished reputations could be rebuilt, with time, effort, and a heart willing to change.